there, everybody. This is Jacob Campbell from Leijiverse, facebook.com/Leijiverse. From what I understand, the world's only English-speaking Leijiverse community. And what we've been doing is interviewing a lot of people who have either worked directly with Leiji Matsumoto works or in the fan community surrounding the works, and get a little bit more information, a little more insight into how they've worked together and what those experiences were like. So today we are speaking with Cedric Littardi, and I probably butchered it, but he's a fantastic fellow that has worked closely with Kaze, who published a ton of Leiji Matsumoto's animes, both retro and modern, onto DVD, did a fantastic job, worked with Toki No Wa to do that, and actually brought in some people in the fan community to help with that, which I find to be fantastic. So let's get into it. Cedric, how are you doing today?
Perfectly fine, thank you.
Awesome. And first question I wanted to ask you is, who are you and what do you do for a living? What's your deal?
That's a fairly long question.
Yes.
So in order to explain what I do today, which hasn't changed that much, let's see where I started. When I was a student, it was the beginning of Japanese anime. We're talking early 90s. I had a trip to basically Hong Kong when I was 16, discovered lots of anime and OAVs over there. So you have to know that I'm actually French, half Italian. So I was exposed to anime on TV. I think we can talk about that later. But it was very hard to get lots of the more major stuff in our country. So I basically met with other people like me, and we co-founded a fanzine called Animeland, who was printed 500 copies, black and white. I know it's going to be hard to believe for some of you, but it wasn't actually made with computers or very little. We were sticking the stuff and photocopying it. Yeah.
Good old Xerox.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that without causing a stir, but
well, I have a punk background a little bit, so I'm pretty familiar with the concept. And yes.
So anyway, Animeland still exists today. Actually, I took a copy. This is the latest issue of Animeland.
Yes, we actually spoke with Yvonne West Lawrence.
Was one of the guys I founded the magazine with, basically. We were talking about super stuff, movies, OAVs, stuff which we were excited about, but getting hold of them. So now the internet didn't exist back then. I want to make sure about the background. Getting hold of them was extremely difficult. They were available in Japanese, in Japan, in VHS. Some of you might remember that that wasn't the same video system because Japan and USA used NTSC and Europe used PAL. So it wasn't even compatible. The cost of a VCR that could read between standards was like outrageous back then.
Yeah.
So, it was high adventure. You imagine Conan for anime, that was it. And so what happened is we were talking about the stuff, but we were also, at some stage, I was saying, okay, guys, but how can we make it available? Because it's very nice to give the people all this saliva. Some of it is available on TV, a minority, but how do you get to the other stuff? And that's basically how I founded Kaze. Kaze was the first anime publisher in France, founded in 1993. You could say was the equivalent of maybe A Division in America.
Okay, let me cut you short real quick because I wanted to ask more about Kaze in a second. I just want to know, how do you describe what you do for a living?
Well, I let I let TV describe it for me, because once they ran a small documentary about me, 5 minutes, a small subject, and they called me the Saint Patron of geeks. But what I call myself, well, what I've been called is the entrepreneur of the cultures, of the imaginary cultures, basically the geek entrepreneur in France, because I've been doing lots of stuff, not only anime, though it remains my domain of highest specialty. I'm still publisher of Animeland. I have a book label where we publish essays and stuff. I have a board gaming company where we create board games with anime and other stuff. I actually have 2 bars called the Bars at the End of the Universe, one in Paris, one in Lille, which are known to Parisians and tourists that came around them as the geek centers of Paris.
Is that why you have that Cthulhu Absinthe T-shirt?
Yeah. Oh, I love that shirt. It's I actually bought it at Gen Con, but it's a very nice Cthulhu Absinthe shirt. And there's the people that went into anime and manga and started doing it exclusively. Being so much into something that you consider all the rest to be crappy or not as good or etc. But I was never like that. I came into anime because of my love for these cultures. I loved and I still love anime and discovered everything, but I always remained open to everything else. I mean, American comic books, French comic books, video games, whatever, you name it. And one chance you have when you're in a country like France, or many countries in Europe, is you're highly aware of the cultural differences, because in America, you have to do a lot of walking before you start talking to people that don't speak your language officially. In Japan, they're like close on the island, but in Europe, you take the train and in 1 hour you are in a country where they have a different language and a different culture, and you understand that not everything is the same. So actually, this is very important to the story of anime, because the popularity of different anime and manga is widely different from one European territory to the other.
Yes,
and that's interesting.
I mean, that's
Leiji Matsumoto. That's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, that's a global phenomenon, I find, as well. I mean, so many animes that make it out west start in Hawaii, which is a different culturally.
I was told that Hawaii was part of Japan now.
Well, Hawaii is its own sovereign nation to many people, and that's a deeper political topic to be spoken on maybe in a different podcast.
For the tourists, it's Japanese, from what I understand.
I see. Yes. That you are quite the geek entrepreneur, it seems. You have your hands in a lot of different pots, and you made a lot of cool stuff, and we are appreciative of that.
I also made some stuff which retrospectively is not that cool, I guess. But I was trying to make something cool.
So first things first, what introduced you to anime, and more specifically, Leiji Matsumoto anime?
Okay, so if you ask a French guy my age, or a little younger, or a little older, what introduced them to anime, they will give you only one answer, which is Goldorak. Okay, so what is Goldorak? Goldorak is the French translation of UFO Robo Grandizer, which is the second giant robot done by Go Nagai after Mazinger Z. Why? Because it was the first, and it wasn't really the first anime. There was other stuff from Tezuka, the first anime of its kind that was broadcast on French television, and it revolutionized the approach of animation, because putting a giant robo show with invaders from space that wanted to control Earth and giant robots fighting was very, very different from the average European or even American animation that we could see on TV back then. That created the move for the TV channels. It was a way to get a cheap animation that works. They were considering they were showing crap, but crap that works brings money, so that's
yes.
But that's what started. So they started getting other animations on TV. Now, I have a huge chance in my life is that I am half Italian. My father and my father's family are Italian, though I most of my life I lived in Paris. So how is that a chance? Because there was a big difference between the television landscape in France and Italy. Both showed Goldorak Grandizer at the same time. However, when in France, TV channels were a state-owned monopoly with 3 channels back then, it was already privatized in Italy. So you had myriads of channels, regional channels, national channels. You had a huge landscape. When in France, there was like a fight in the opinion between channels that want to get audience, but parents complaining because anime is so evil. So it was kept off balance, and there was a limited amount that anime that went through before they closed it. In Italy, that didn't happen. So Italy is the country in the Western world that sells most robot toys. So
Did you get Vanguard Ace?
I don't think so. It was later.
Not all of them.
Vanguard was later. I have to remember. So there was
We'll
Daitan 3, Trident G7, Mazinger, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Harlock was one of those that slipped through the cracks. So it was in France too. However, it was broadcast in Italy before. So what happened is I was on vacation in Italy. As every summer in Italy, I would watch TV because cartoons are nice. We're talking, I was 5 or 6 years old back then. And this is how I discovered Harlock, because it was on TV in Italy before it was ever in France. Of course, I was immediately a huge fan. I went back to France to discover that shortly thereafter they started broadcasting Harlock. I'm talking about the first series, of course, the ones with the Amazons, 78. So if you ask me why I became an instant fan of Harlock, how come? What am I supposed to say? The space show with aliens and spaceships and the pirate captain, and I mean, what is there to not like?
So you discover Matsumoto, as do many other children in your time and space, and through all this, the passion develops, and eventually you get to creating Kaze. Yeah. So can you take me from that point to Kaze?
I discovered stuff that wasn't available in France, came back, met the people that was whom I founded Animeland, then tried to make some other stuff available which wasn't, like OAVs and films, founded Kaze, and don't ask me how, because you know what?
Well, that's exactly what I asked.
No, but if today, I knew, I went back in the past knowing what I know right now about how a company works, etc., I would never have done it.
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm
complete blindness is, we can try, let's do it.
Yeah, that's the passion, though, that sometimes is required, and that ignorance is sometimes a veil to keep you from the consequences. I was just talking to somebody else about this. Leiji Matsumoto kind of teaches children about the concept of freedom. And he often portrays people who are young pursuing freedom in ignorance. And they're unaware of what those consequences are for expressing your freedom in the universe, and they don't know how to do it. So you were the Tetsuro, you were the, I just watched Can You Love Like a Mother, Artemis, trying to leave the planet and go do your own thing without knowing what those consequences are. Now, you survived. So tell us how you came to that decision and maybe what it was like early on. Tell me about the ignorance. We want to know.
It came to that decision. It didn't feel like a decision. It felt like the natural thing to do.
Yeah, destiny.
And not destiny. It's just like, we have to allow people to see anime. So whatever we need to do, we will do it. Yay!
Yeah.
And so we basically started trying to get contacts, trying to understand how the audiovisual industry worked, learn to use computers to do subtitles, learn how to replicate VHS. Initially, we started importing VHS from the UK because that was the beginning of manga video. It was not very long, but it allowed to see stuff in PAL. Then we started learning how maybe we could get rights. We made a partnership with a Japanese company, which was in France. Started getting some rights, and the first anime that came out on the label Kaze is Record of Lodoss War.
Okay, cool.
Is out also in America, but
yes,
France is probably the country where Lodoss War is the strongest in the world.
So going back, you mentioned a company for historical purposes. Are you at liberty to say what company that was and what your relationship with them was like?
Yes, it was a company called Ucore. It was a small audiovisual agent for some Japanese companies in entertainment, with a Japanese lady that worked in France. They worked on Ghibli movies early on. And because we met around Ghibli movies, That's when we started discussing about anime, and basically we made a partnership where they discussed the rights, and the first rights I had on my own, and then when they understood what we were doing, we created that partnership where they got the rights, and we worked on the exploitation. Now we're talking about a time frame in which Japanese international rights departments had no one speaking English. It was another world. Of course, there was no internet, so most of communication was through fax. There was the first computers. We basically tried to contact people, found contacts. I was hugely helped by one thing which you realize by now is my mastery of the English language is pretty good. I can get around and speak to people in English without them necessarily going, oh no, another French guy, we're not going to understand. At the same time as I was creating Kaze, I was at the university. I was basically running part of Animeland, Kaze, and my studies at the same time.
Did you manage to complete college?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a what would be something like an MBA at the ESCP, which is one of the big Paris French business schools, basically.
Okay, so that was setting you up for.
To be honest, what I studied wasn't really useful after, because I was so deep into some things were useful, but my experience was so direct that I think experience taught me more than the lessons.
Yeah, college is its own sort of questionable institution sometimes, but another podcast.
It gives you time to run other stuff.
So you said you met this woman at was it UCOM?
UCOR.
UCOR, sorry. UCOR. You met this woman at UCOR through Studio Ghibli.
No, I met her because she was representing Studio Ghibli, and there was a small festival in the Paris area that showed the movies back then. Which it was a festival about kids' movies, and it was the year of Japan. So they showed lots of movies, including Ghibli, and that's where we met and started basically. We met as Animeland. We were covering the event, and we met. And I mean, the contacts and ideas we got with Animeland are what allowed me to, see a bigger picture and advance. It's not like, it's not like there was a master strategy, because, quite frankly, didn't know how it would work back then. There was no VHS for anime. For the first time in 1993, I think, I was at the Annecy Festival. Annecy is a city in the Alps in France, near Switzerland, and it has the largest animation festival in the world. And when I was there the first years, you couldn't talk about Japanese animation because people wouldn't even consider it to be animation. Things evolved, and a lot under my pressure at Kaze. And in 2012, they created an award for me, basically to thank me for my outstanding work at promoting Japanese animation throughout the world. Now, I'm not saying that to boast, but it shows the huge change in mentality about Japanese animation in general that happened in these 20 to 30 years.
That is very much the case for people who came from your era and built up anime for everybody else to be able to access it. So we all thank you and the many others like you for enduring the lack of respect, I think, that Japanese animation received at that time. You do meet through this person. You were at Annecy, and you met her at the lady from UCOR.
Yep.
And
her name was Wiki-san.
Okay. And what was there a movie? Did you both go to the same movie? I mean, what was that meeting like? Did you know
it wasn't
meet each other there?
It was like she was with the Ghibli delegation, and we were introducing Animeland and anime and etc. And she saw the opportunity to use her contacts with Japan. I mean, it was basically her job to bring audiovisual.
So she identified you as a potential way to promote.
Yeah, if you want to put it that way, put it that way. Quite frankly, it's more like an ongoing process that resulted in that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the networking that
in a
leads to
nutshell,
it.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you were networking back in the day, but probably before networking
before I knew
was
the meaning of the word networking. But
yeah, before it took. Now everybody's networking. I'm networking with my friend by showing them my kids on Facebook. So through this, you get the opportunity to work on Matsumoto's works and start publishing. And what year did this start?
Told you Lodoss War came out in 94.
Okay, so Lodoss War was 94.
It was the first VHS, so it started in 93 basically, because we didn't pull it out of a magic hat, but that's what happened.
You start publishing those works, and I'm assuming there's maybe dozens over the next decade. And we're going to kind of skim over that, if that's all correct, and get to 2003.
No, you are actually jumping over a very important.
That's fair. I was going to ask about
1997. Okay. Why 1997? In 1997, something very interesting happens. UGC is the biggest cinema theater chain in France. Opens what was to become and is still today the largest cinema, the largest movie theater in France by attendance. It's cinema in the center of Paris called in Les Halles. I think there's like over 20 rooms in it. And for their opening, they are interested in doing a festival with anime movies. We put together in a record amount of time, which is unheard of in the history of creating festivals. Well, I don't really remember how long, but I remember spending a lot of nights with 0 minutes of sleep making it happen. A festival with 7 movies, 1 per day. Okay? So here we go. We hunt 7 movies for that festival. Not Ghibli, because they don't want to, except 7 anime movies. I take that opportunity to say, okay, guys, you know what? There is a Galaxy Express 39 movie with Harlock in it. That movie became one of the first movies out of Ghibli to be released theatrically, not nationwide, but in a festival that lasted several weeks, okay, on 35mm. And that was very, very important. And that particular movie also allowed us to do one of the nicest box sets we ever did for VHS. We did a beautiful black box. We made a T-shirt in it. There was the VHS. I still remember it. It was numbered. It was wonderful. And that's the first real chance I had at working directly on the Harlock universe.
Okay, and that actually was my next question, that I skipped something. I appreciate you for being better than me at this. A quick side question as well. Do you have goodies on hand? Do you have things you'd like to show?
No, I did. No, because I don't collect stuff.
I hear you. So you are definitively not a collector.
No, I have like a huge amount of DVDs, VHS, whatever. But I don't collect them. I don't tidy them. I told you, I'm not in the past. I enjoy them hugely when I see them, but no, I don't. But I'm sure. I'm sure. On the other hand, Watcha and the other guys, they have everything.
Yes, Watcha showed off all the Kaze DVDs, and we're going to get to that, and gave a good show.
So, I'm going to tell you one thing, but which is important. You will see, you've seen on the Kaze DVDs, and you would see if I was able to show you the box sets for Galaxy Express. I would probably hunt a picture somewhere, but one of my strategic choices was always to make high quality packaging for the products, which is not the choice they made in America, for example, where they were like trying to do VHS standard, etc. But I always fought for that, because I always said, okay, there are various reasons, but one of them, and which work, is say, okay, Japanese animation is something which has a very bad image. I have to pitch Japanese anime stuff to TV stations, to people, to promotion, to, so they might believe that what we're showing is crap. But if I put a beautiful box in front of them, which looks better than the one they have for Hollywood movies, or at least, etc., psychologically, it doesn't work because they say, okay, how can that be crap if there's so much effort in something which is so beautiful?
Presentation is just so important, and it's so critical for there to be smaller publishers, or at least more grassroots publishers, who don't have a bunch of bean counters telling them that we can't afford to put the packaging, the collateral cost into these releases, and you knew better. So that's fantastic.
Well, I mean, people have different reasons to do different stuff, and they don't always all have the same things. Maybe in America it would be very difficult. But the reason...
I would say there's a lot of bean counting going on in America.
But the product is much more standard because the logistics are much harder to handle, and maybe it's extremely difficult to put non-standard stuff in shops. I mean, it's not about saying
shelf space is critical.
Were wrong. Everyone has their own specialties, but
it's not necessarily American cultural, but I know that the bigger a company gets, the more the financial department has a say in what gets put out. That is just a fact of publishing, and you know that.
It's
a
fact of life, especially since 2008. But something that is determining in understanding what I do is I always did it from the start to allow other people to discover more about Japanese animation. And that is something that is true in all the decisions I've taken since then. So when I say we have to make a beautiful box, it's going to cost more, sure, but people are going to notice it more, to give it a better quality, and if they see it, they will consider it not with a much less biased mindset, and that is what is important.
Yeah. You define the bias with a beautiful presentation. So this movie festival that
it was called Cinemanga.
Cinemanga.
Yeah, very smart. It took a lot of brainstorming.
It's a great word mash there. I like it. So you were able to procure those rights to just show the movie Galaxy Express 999. And what was that publishing opportunity, or at least distribution opportunity like? Was it a really standard business transaction, or did you have to, go through a network of tubes to end up on the other side? What was that like?
You mean the discussion?
To gain the rights, because you mentioned a company.
Okay. This is the thing, is at that stage, we had the partnership with the Ucore company. So they handled Japan, but Galaxy Express was not so hard insofar as it was handled by Toei, but Toei Movie, and Toei Movie company, as every big movie company, is on international markets to sell their product internationally. They just hide the animation because they don't think it will sell, but it's still in their catalog. So
okay.
Once you know that,
so Toei Movie was focused on live action films.
Well, the people in movie divisions. I mean, of course, this has changed. But remember, we are at the time where Japanese have no clue that there's any international interest for Japanese animation. I'm going to tell you one thing. Funny story. When Toei Animation opened their office in Europe, okay, that was, I don't remember, maybe 10 years ago, a little more. They sent a guy, which became a friend of mine since then, and I was the first one to call him, and because I don't, and I called him, and he said, yeah, can you tell me a little more about France? I said, okay, I'm going to take you out to bring you to different shops so you see what the landscape is in the stores. So I bring him to stores. In the stores, of course, there's lots of merchandise, but there's a lot of Saint Seiya stuff. Okay, so I know we're talking about Harlock, not Saint Seiya, but just so that you know, Saint Seiya
it's come up before. It's come up before.
It's popular show in France and Spain, etc. But it was on the air, but very, very popular. And of course, there's lots of merchandising because Bandai does toys, which is the reasons why you find it easily in the stores. Then we visit the shops. We sit down in a cafe, not a Starbucks because we're in Paris. And he says, I noticed there's a lot of Saint Seiya stuff, but is Saint Seiya popular in France? Okay, so Saint Seiya was in France since 1988. Okay, so everyone in France, even the people that haven't watched it, know what Saint Seiya is, and it has a huge following. Toei, 10 years ago, was not even aware of that. Okay, 10 years ago. I mean, the internet already existed 10 years ago. So what I mean is Japan has no idea there is interest for their animation internationally at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they are, they're just starting to grasp it.
Are you saying in 2010, this is how they were perceiving things? You said 10 years ago.
I don't remember the exact date, maybe 2005.
2005.
Like that,
okay.
Anyway.
That makes a little more sense. Okay, yeah.
No, not 2000, 2007, 2000. Anyway, but anyway, Saint Seiya is being rebroadcast on satellite TV like continuously for the past 20 years. So back then, there were people to do international sales for movies, but these people do international sales in movie festival, Cannes, American Film Market, etc., which are essentially movies for live action. So it's not like they go there and say, "Oh, we have a new Harlock anime." They go there and say, "We have a new movie by Kurosawa Akira," or this is a movie about. We have a new Godzilla movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're not pushing their anime. But when they have it, they have it. So if you ask for it, of course, their job is they want to sell it. So at least in the movie business, well, sometimes with Japanese, you could argue about them wanting to sell anything, but in that case, they do. So once you know where it is, and you have the right contact, it wasn't that hard. What was hard is to buy 35mm prints, bring them in a record amount of time, subtitle them and translate them and subtitle them. That was really hard.
Okay, so the business transaction was easy at that point because you had enough network build up, and then at that point it was just work.
Well, I'm not saying it was easy, but
okay. So what was it? I mean, what were the difficulties?
It wasn't the roughest ride.
From there, you must see some interest with Matsumoto build up. Is that correct?
The interest for Matsumoto was always there in Harlock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but from your Cinemanga thing,
it gave the Cinemanga thing basically told people, okay, this is not dead. You know, it's not because you haven't watched Harlock on TV since 1984 that there is no more Harlock out there.
And France didn't even get all of Harlock at once. You missed out on the last 3 episodes, and that is remedied.
That is trauma. You can't tell me that. You're going to ruin this interview. I'm not going to finish it.
Well, it was corrected. It was fixed, right? And this correction, this healing of your trauma, occurred in 2003, I believe.
When we did the DVDs,
Yeah, and 2003 marks a remarkable revival of Matsumoto works being published in France, and it also marks a revival and kind of new establishment in the French fan community, Toki No Wa. Their actions eventually lead to interact with yours, a little bit more on Toki No Wa, made in 2003, and they eventually get together to do a booth at Japan Expo. And setting up there, they end up receiving an offer they couldn't refuse. And maybe you could tell me a little bit more about how that all went down.
I'm not going to tell you about the offer they can't refuse because that's their story. But this is the thing.
I want to hear your angle. I want to know the Kaze side of it because I only have half of it. We need it for historical purposes, Cedric.
You have 2 different questions I'm going to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the first is, when anime hit VHS, okay, we were the first, but suddenly everyone wanted to do anime. So it went up, and then the market started to crash because of that, but also because the VHS was saturated. That came back together when DVD came. So that's 2001. Okay, 2002. So anyway, between 98 and 2002, the market is bad. So you can't really launch new stuff efficiently, etc. So we rebuild the DVD market, which is good because the DVD has the quality, so we can push that quality image that was so important. And also, in effect, they produce a new series from Matsumoto in Japan. Because unfortunately for the old series, I would like to do them, but they're more or less controlled by the people that show them on TV. So for them, it's like elementary, etc. So we can only work on new stuff. Now, the difficulty back then is, can we get DVD rights? Because Japanese didn't necessarily clear the DVD rights for the stuff they're doing. So that's one of the big difficulties. But anyway, okay, we get access to, we had the movie, but there's a new production with Cosmo Warrior Zero. There's new Matsumoto stuff. You can negotiate. I'll hold in Japan. So,
it was Gun Frontier first,
is
right?
Not there anymore. We're running things direct.
Oh, okay. So you've taken over that enterprise, and Gun Frontier was the first one to kind of spoil your story here a little bit.
Gun Frontier and Cosmo Warrior Zero had the same producer, so it was a company called Enoki Films, which I had been one of the first companies I started working with. Actually, what really I met at the beginning. Someone I liked very much. They were a little more international. They had an office in LA already. It was a family company. We already had a very good relationship, and they did a bunch of classic titles, not only Matsumoto ones. And we decided, because they had a slot for that, to get them. And once we did, we said, okay, we have the opportunity. There's new material, so the approval is not going to be so difficult. Well, it will be, but we don't. We're not like digging into stuff which is 20 years old, etc. So this is the opportunity to do something we can be proud of. You, by now, if you haven't fallen asleep by watching this interview, you know that I started with a 500 copy fanzine. In everything I do, I am kind of tied to that way of seeing things, which means when I meet people which are passionate and do things, I want to work with them. Because we had a Webring of passionate people that were devoting all their strengths to Matsumoto, far beyond the amount of strength I could put into that, because I had lots of other things to talk about, and that were getting like nearly famous with everyone with Leiji Matsumoto, which were vocal, which were bringing things, which were explaining things. So the question is, okay, what do we do together? And when you do that, generally, what I say is, okay, what do you want to do? What's the what? How do you feel? What do you want? What is the ideal way to do this? And generally, it works out.
Yeah, I mean, finding people that are more art motivated, passion motivated than money motivated in publishing is definitely worth its weight in gold. And I do want to try and talk a little bit about that first meeting, because I'll give you Watch's account. It was them at the convention, and they were approached by these guys, I'm assuming a couple guys, and they didn't give their publishing name. They just said, hey, we're interested in working with you guys because you're passionate and we're doing these releases and we're interested. And he was like, okay, sure. And exchange some information. And they thought they'd never hear back from you because, especially in the publishing world, people say a lot of things and don't mean them or can't execute on them. But you're obviously not in that class.
No, if I say something, just curious, I mean it.
Yeah. I mean, were you the person that said that? Were you at Japan Expo?
So
yeah.
I always spend time in conventions walking around the booth. And I take an immense amount of pleasure in that. Okay. And when I say walking around the booth, I don't mean walking around the big booth. I mean walking around every booth.
Yes.
Spending time looking at, what the fans are doing.
You're a publisher, so you're always looking for the diamond in the rough anyways. I mean, that's a quality you have to have.
Wait a second. Back then, I was not a book publisher. Okay, not yet. Well,
but you were a VHS and DVD publisher.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was.
But when I do that, it is as much, for me, it's a barometer. It's how I feel things, okay? Now, if you're a publisher, you have to try and feel. You have to have your mind about what you want and what is good, etc. Because otherwise, you just take in what everyone knows and not do anything.
Yeah,
but you have
there's no math. Yeah, there's no mathematical expression for what's going to be successful.
And for me, walking in conventions is my drug. It's how I get. Drug is maybe not the term. It's
I was going to say you're probably going through withdrawal right now if that's the case because of the situation we're in. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes,
Yeah.
I when the 2 last weeks of confinement here, I felt like a lion in a cage. Like,
Oh,
anyway,
man.
it's so important for me to do that, and I always, buy some fanzines, etc. And when I do, I'm not going around saying, "Hey, hi guys, I'm from this super company, etc." It's I talk, and if it comes up, it does, but I never introduce myself because I want to have a real relationship with the people. And understand what their passion comes from and how they drew something very nice. I always come out of a convention with something I bought in the fan stands. Sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a fanzine, sometimes, and I don't buy it just to make people happy. I buy it because I say, oh, that's really nice, nice idea, and I discuss with them and etc. Toki No Wa is not the only example. We had a very good relationship with the Gundam Association.
Okay.
Called AUG, which we've worked with for years, and actually now he's one of the official publishers, translators for Gundam.
Okay.
Which I spend lots of time working with too, etc. So,
what is that under AGU, or is that a different company that they're with?
No, so today the guy in charge for the association AUG, there's the official translator for Gundam in French. Is a guy which was one of the founders of Animeland. Well, not one of the founder, but one of the early guys that participated in the event. Okay. And because he cannot translate everything, the other guy from AUG, I don't remember if I think we introduced him. But anyway, we put them together and put Sunrise in the loop to organize some stuff around Gundam.
Okay. And is
so
that
if one day you want to do a subject about Gundam in France, I'm sure he can tell you the story.
Yeah. So the publishing company he works with is...
He's independent.
Oh,
no.
Wow.
Because also, what I didn't tell you is we are supervising all the translations for Sunrise in France.
So you're at Toki No Wa's booth at Japan Expo, and what do you remember about... did you come to their table and just feel inspired to make an offer? Or...
I found people that love Leiji Matsumoto. I took a look. I saw immediately that they knew what they were doing big time. And so I said, okay, guys, we're going to do some stuff. Can we collaborate? And
it just clicked.
Yeah, but that's, you say, they thought that they will never be contacted, but it works both ways. Sometimes I meet people and say, maybe they will never contact me again, and they don't. So it's really, the people that are very active, they always get back to you.
Yeah.
The people that really want to do something, they always come back to you.
So, and that leads to a lot of creative works being made to just go alongside the DVDs. And one of the more fascinating things that I don't see, I don't know of another example of this, maybe you'd seen something like this and it inspired you to do it, was a fan commentary. That to me is fascinating. I mean, the copy, all that makes sense. That's pretty logical. But what led to fan commentary? What inspired that?
It is very difficult to get hold of interesting material when you are working with Japan. Now, right now, it's very difficult because everything needs to get approved, and they just don't let you write anything else than the official or whatever. But back then, when approvals weren't always so tough, earlier on, I told you I had trauma because I didn't see the end of Harlock, and they broke up the movie of SSX and put it at the end of the series, and I didn't understand anything. If someone had written things down there explaining what happened, why it had been done, what are the differences between the film, etc., etc., maybe it would have been, not maybe, it would have gone much better. That's, I'm not saying fan commentary, the guy that writes on Facebook because he just discovered the thing 2 minutes ago. We're talking about people that have spent a significant portion of their free time studying Leiji Matsumoto's work and have opinions which are to be valued about that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like I said earlier, and I've said over and over again, these people are in many ways historians. And I think that is a fascinating way to have people commentate, especially on maybe older anime, what the historical context was, not just for them personally, but as the world as a whole. And they are a great source of that knowledge. So it was a fantastic idea, whatever way it came up. I want to talk a little bit more about the technical aspect of what you do and what the process looks like and perhaps how it's evolved over time, what it takes to really publish a DVD, an anime DVD. I mean, can you take us from A to Z, maybe
Sure,
then and now?
So, okay, so for starters is how do you see the anime? Well, when it's well organized and well sold, you have contacts, you go to international markets, you ask for screeners. That's the regular way to do business. Japan not being organized so much, it's more about knowing what's going on in Japan and seeing it. Of course, now you do that with the internet, but when we started Animeland, we had many sources, such as the Japanese magazines. I guess you've all heard of New Type, maybe Anime Age, etc. Going to Japan, having people to talk to in Japan, etc. But basically following what's going up there. Now, once you want to know more about a show or you want to take it, you have to figure out who is holding the international rights to it. And that is not an exact science. Part of the job is trying to find out who you actually have to talk to and who actually takes the decision. Sometimes it's straightforward. I mean, to be honest, for Gun Frontier and Cosmo Warrior Zero, it was very straightforward. Then you have to make an offer. Offers are made basically in terms of royalties and advances. So the material you get is generally, back then, digital Betacam tapes. Now Japan has shifted to digital, but that happened mainly because of the Fukushima disaster. Because what you might not know is that the disaster happened just near Sony's plant that was producing one of the two plants in the world producing all the digital Betacam. And so there wasn't enough digital Betacam for even the cameras back then. So they shifted to digital. And before digital Betacam, there was regular Betacam also, but the transfer to digital Betacam happened more or less when the DVDs happened. There's a lot of issues with the material because, first of all, if it's an old show, maybe they don't have digital. And also, I told you about NTSC and PAL. You had to transcode very often, so it's a change in the number of, in the frame rate.
Yeah, you get it. It's a little slower in that transition process.
Yes, because it's 24 images or 30. Or it's not 22. I mean, there's 22, 23. It's a nightmare, but so it's a little slower. It's not the exact same number of lines on the screen. Basically, PAL was a little better than NTSC in terms of image quality. I'm not saying that to defend anyone. It's just a fact that if the source is NTSC, you can't make it better anyway. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that didn't take off in the West, like S-Video. Nobody wanted to mess with S-Video in the States. It's just like, give me that RCA cable. It's simple. If I could step back real quick, I'm into the super nitty gritty. I love the business end of this. What does a typical offer look like for something you publish? And I don't want you to break NDAs or anything like that. But
the thing is, it vastly it's a market of offer and demand, and it vastly changes over time, depending on where your money goes.
Yes,
where your money comes from. When you couldn't sell VHS, it went down. When DVD came, it went back up. When everyone started pirating stuff on the internet, it went down, etc. Right now, because there's a huge amount of international competition, etc., it's very high. And honestly, some shows can be really cheap and some can be very expensive. I've seen, and it depends on the territory. So I've seen deals as low as 500 in advance per episode and as high as 250,000.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought you were.
So sorry, but I mean, it's impossible to really give you a complete understanding because it changes so much. We're talking about immaterial rights. It's not like you have a minimum amount of. You go to the restaurant. They're not going to sell it, even if there's a crisis, for less than the cost of the food.
Right. I mean, there are some material costs that I believe that would still be considered, but grossly, you're right. It is a mental product, and its value is almost purely
The material costs
perceived.
change greatly also depending on
Yeah.
the technology, So obviously the cost of, for theatrical releases, the cost of the 35 millimeter prints was the highest cost of all, depending on how many you do, because you had to, I don't know how much in depth I have to go, but basically, in order to create a 35 millimeter print, you need an internegative print. So it's a negative print, and the true file, and there's a chemical reaction, and basically you print the opposite. Creating it is a huge amount of money, and also you had to create the sound for it, and then you have to print so it was now you do it digitally, of course, but 10 years ago was still all film. So the cost was huge when you did the theatrical release. These files or these masters, there's something very important you need with them, which is separate tracks for the language. So that's what you call the M&Es, music and effects. Because basically, when you are going to dub them, you are going to dub the language. You are not going to dub the effects. You need to have a separate music and effects. So you do the dubbing in your language, and then you remix it with the music and effects.
Some publishers do add new effects, though.
Normally, you are not allowed to do that.
Okay.
But it depends.
Maybe these are older.
Normally,
animes.
the Japanese don't let you do that.
Now maybe perhaps though too, because they have a lot more control, and that comes with good and bad, because from what I understand, they are far less willing to allow people to localize things as much, as give the language as much localized context, where in Japan, somebody might repeat themselves a lot. Because that's just like their theatrical thing that they do when they have dialogue, and that doesn't read as well to, say, an English-speaking audience.
The problem is you have a ratio between languages, which is a lip sync ratio. So dubbing, you have lips moving, blah 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 blah, and these are syllables. Okay. Now the Japanese takes 30% more syllables to say the same thing than in most Western languages. I mean French, but English is not so far. Basically, when you dub it, you have to adapt it because you are going to have to say much more.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, if they don't let you do anything to it. I mean, I grew up watching Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and they would edit lip flaps to fit dialogue. And to me, that has never seemed like it would be that big of a problem beyond editing time to correct that issue. But if there are lots of restrictions put on you, I would understand why that would be more of an issue.
Well, there's a big difference between Europe and America, which is in Europe, you dub everything anyway. Well, not everything, but content comes massively from America, so you need to dub it. So we have a strong dubbing industry. In America, except for anime, most of what they show is done in English. So America, I'm over-exaggerating, but has had to create a dubbing industry for anime. I'm exaggerating because they have other stuff, but look at the percentage of stuff that they have besides anime, which is not originally in English. Yeah, there's one French movie from time to time.
Yeah, there's not as much production happening.
You can still watch
Europe.
British movies despite the horrible accents. It's still.
But I guess my point is, I've never seen why dubbing can't be more of editing lip flaps, especially in anime, when generally you're looking at a still frame of somebody talking. And there's not a ton of movement on these characters with dialogue. Why can't we cut it up? Especially when it's like, why can't we cut it up? And if it's mostly because of restrictions, that makes sense. Not in the way that I'm like, oh, I agree, but it makes sense in the way that the publisher's hands are tied.
First of all, I and many other people, but it's something really strong for the French, would not dream about touching the integrity of an original work. First of all, it's very hard because if you take some minutes out of it, some seconds, you desynchronize the music and effects, you can create a number of problems and you change the rhythm. And the rhythm is a fundamental part of an artist's intention. Okay? So I mean,
I'm still kind of, because I work a lot in editing. I edit a lot of things, and I could see how if you had the sound files and you had everything together, barring like some little zooms into somebody while they're talking, it might be easy to cut things up, because rhythm for a Japanese audience is not the same as rhythm for an English audience, depending on what they're culturally aware of.
Yeah, I agree. That's why you have to keep it Japanese.
Because you want them to get accustomed to Japanese rhythm.
Work, you know.
I see.
It's not like, oh, we have to rhythm it as Americans because we're Americans. No, this is a foreign work, so we have to learn how they written this stuff.
I just don't know, and this is probably blasphemy for anybody. Everybody's like, Jake, shut up. But I don't believe in the sanctity of that. I don't believe in the sanctity of that personally, but it's good to know how everybody else feels about it. But that's really cool. So you get to the dubbing phase of things.
We have two processes, okay? So we have the process of working with the moving image, okay? So we have to transcode the video or whatever, translate it correctly. The same translation is not used for dubbing and subtitling, or at least you can't use the same exactly, so you have to be careful about what you do. And then you send to subtitling. So subtitling is done with a computer. You put the lines. There are some rules. You cannot let the subtitle overlap a change in frames. When you have when you move from one scene to another, you're not supposed to let it go. You have a maximum amount of characters you can leave. You can read per frame, etc. So it's more complicated than it looks like. Now, the dubbing studio, you know, they take the tracks, they take the actors, they record the actors, they remix it. You program the DVD, you author it. Basically, you put all the elements together in the DVD with a menu, and you make sure they stay synchronized. This is a very simple, fast explanation. Don't kill me for it. And as a parallel, you have to work on the still image, which is what? The packaging. The bonus, not only the image. What is your box going to look like? What is your booklet going to look like? Do you add something? What editorial content do you add? And all the marketing comes from it. You know, who's your target? How do you make sure that you address your target? Okay.
Yes.
Creating a DVD for 8-year-old kid is not creating a DVD or whatever for a 16-year-old teenager. You know, you can't do things the same way. And you have to be to respect the integrity of the work, you know. So obviously, if you're doing Harlock, you are potentially addressing multiple generations or older people. So you have to take that into account. Or Ginga Tetsudo, or Galaxy Express. I mean, so you have these two parallel works, which will, you know, eventually meet into the final product. I'm talking only DVD. I'm not talking about TV sales or TV broadcast or etc. You know, it looks simple, and actually, if you streamline it, it is. But there's 1,000 small things everywhere you have to consider, and everything has to go through approval. So approval is a game of ping pong. You send it, they send notifications, etc. Sometimes you have to fight because what they're asking you is not reasonable. If you want to do it properly, it's very time consuming. If you want to, for example, add some background about the universe made by a group of super smart and wonderful fans like Toki No Wa, you have to put it in the planning, work on the editorial, make sure you can publish it, etc.
So from the dubbing process and the graphic design process, and you blend those together, and you have a product that's ready for pressing.
Yeah. So
what does your pressing look like?
Basically, pressing is you send the files for the product, you send the files for the DVD, and they are going to produce a glass master with it, like a negative, which they're going to use to press it in the chain.
And I'm assuming at some point then you receive something like a finished product. Do you prove that?
Yes. You always do, because the changing formats creates bugs, basically. You have a lot of checking to do. There's a lot of things that, I mean, I've seen so many mistakes, different kinds that, you know. That's
I'm sure you're not so immune to them either. I mean,
no. I wish.
It's a fact of life.
No, I'm not. Well, yeah, the problem is you get some, and then you find a process to remove the possibility of that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes your process works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you find another one. But eventually, you always find another mistake, bug, or something that you never dreamed about, and you have to put a new process. So you get like overlapping processes all the time, and you're trying to do a good job. But there's a huge amount of points in the system where something can go wrong.
Yes, it can all break down very easily.
The difference with the internet is, on the internet, you put something. If it goes wrong, you change it.
Mm-hmm.
But when something is pressed, you can't just change it on the network and it changes.
Absolutely.
It's locked.
Yes. So you get that process locked down, like you said, and I'm assuming maybe you have a warehouse or something, and you receive this huge bunch of DVDs. Pallets, yes. And what happens from there? That's the distribution process. What does that look like for you?
Well, distribution process is relatively standard. You have a sales team that pre-sold it, shops send orders, you transmit the orders through your software to your logistics facility, and they do the pick and pack and sending.
Okay, so there was never a time in your career where you were packing DVDs yourself and mailing them out, or?
There was.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. There was VHS.
Okay.
By the time DVD, I wasn't doing it anymore.
Probably for the best, yeah.
But believe me, we've done everything. Now, I can tell you a story is that Animeland at the beginning was in a small office on the 5th floor of a building with no elevator. And I can tell you, bringing up magazines, bringing them down to send them is very heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, your back.
It's the same with VHS. But VHS is less heavy, but it's still.
And I'm sure that if you ever mailed something out to people personally, I don't know if you were doing that. I did that. Okay.
We did everything. I mean, in the beginning, we did everything.
Yeah. So if those people who received DVDs from you, if you packed them, I'm sure you sent maybe some of your hairs to them as well. I know I've done that a few times.
Don't say that because now the virus could be carried on them and violating all current rules.
Yes, there are much more strict policies in place today, but I think in the 90s and early 2000s, everybody was relatively safe from that.
Yeah. We weren't worrying about that back then, that's true.
Yeah. And then, so you do the distribution, and from there, are your hands clean until there's another pressing, or is there any other sort of follow-up?
But of course, there's follow-up because you have the customer service.
Okay, so you guys handle the customer service.
You have to.
Okay, it's not the logistics company that.
Well, yeah, but you have to get the people complain and then give the instructions to solve it. But you have to because you can't. You have to be able to address the people that are unhappy, otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming there's also an evaluation process that goes on after where you sort of evaluate
that's called the sales. When they're good, the evaluation is good.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming there's a process where you evaluate what happened in the release from point A to point B and use that sort of audit of what you had done to improve your process.
Yeah, kind of. No, but I'll be clear with you. We're small companies, so we do implement solutions to problems. But thinking that we have the time to, sit down and think, okay, what went wrong? Let's rehearse everything. That's maybe a little overthought because we're already working on the next products, So yes, we learn from it during the process. But do we, have like a monthly meeting about, let's all share things? And no, when we have a problem, we solve it and we try to solve it in the final matter. But it's always about being on time for tomorrow.
I guess that maybe is that's maybe a very personality-driven sort of way to approach the situation, because like we said, you like to focus on what's happening now and what's going to happen in the future.
There's one thing is, don't take what I'm saying as scientific research, because it's my feeling, but in America, you have a bigger market, and so you have more people to do the same thing than we do. At least in the entertainment industry, it's very clear. Okay, and I mean, I'm not going to, on the other side, talk about how France is known about the fact that the employees are tough to handle, and basically you don't have the amount of people, so we always very tense on how we tense in. We have to learn to work very efficiently and very fast, and sometimes just leave the small details out of it because you can't handle it. That's
they can bog you down.
Personal work experience. I'm sure there's lots of situations, etc. I don't want to be, throwing things out there, but I think there's a cultural element which is very much linked to the fact that we basically doing DVD is the same job in France than in America. The process is the same technically. Okay, but you have 6 times our population.
Yes,
even more with the English speaking. So your income from it is much higher. And in America, I've seen that very often when you have problems, the companies they throw bodies at the problems. They hire people and hire more people to solve the problem. We can never afford to do that. So we have to, change the way we work, and change is one of the most difficult things to manage in a company.
More about you, or more so the fans. This interaction you had with Toki No Wa and Webring Leiji, I find it to be extremely unique. And maybe it is.
What I didn't tell you maybe is that one of the guys from Toki No Wa, one of the young guys, Julien Pirou, he came. We hired him to be one of our graphic designers in Kaze.
Yes, we did speak with him as well.
So we hired him. He became part of the team. He remains a very good friend today. Actually, I'm working on a new project by him, which will be published in a couple of months, which has nothing to do with Leiji Matsumoto. And he's like a super active guy. And basically, Toki No Wa is more or less how this all came together.
Yeah, we were actually, it's funny. I was just talking about this with somebody else. Julian brought up that he has a homebrew pen and paper Leijiverse sort of D&D thing going on. And you say you publish board games, and I'm wondering, what would it take to get that made?
Well, I am not going to confirm anything, but let's just say I have a meeting on Wednesday with some people about that.
I just sent Julian an email yesterday about some other things, but I brought it up, and maybe he'll be a little hesitant to respond now because maybe the wheels are moving. But
Julien wrote a book about the history of role-playing game.
Oh, okay.
At my demand, which we are publishing this year.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a history in the world and in France.
The question I was trying to ask was, Toki No Wa and the fan community had such an amazing impact on official DVD releases and licensed work, whereas fans are generally doing zines or fan comics or something like that, not working in an official context. So what I see in this is drastically different from pretty much every other anime I'm familiar with, and I always use this as the example. Dragon Ball has been released on DVD so many times, and you see all the dreadful complaints every time. Their remaster was garbage. They cropped it weird. I don't have the options I want, this, that, and the other thing. And I see these powerful DBZ figures, influencers on YouTube talking about this. And I think to myself, if they would just get these people to man these releases and find people with passion to actually man them and give the fans what they want specifically, they would not be having the issues. Now, maybe it's a size issue because Matsumoto is smaller, but ultimately my question is, do you find that Matsumoto fans have a greater impact on the work than other series? And as a publisher of many series, you may be a good person to ask.
Yes. I think, well, it's a complex question to answer because it's not a manual. It's about the people. Okay? In the end, Matsumoto, as you say, is an artist, and his work is about his and his view. And the people that influence him are part of what happens. I mean, I'm going to tell you something, and you will understand. I'm giving you context. I told you that we pioneered, Kaze pioneered Japanese anime, also in theaters and in NC. And since 2004, we had a policy of doing national releases on some anime. And the first anime we did that with was Appleseed, which is not related to Leiji Matsumoto, but for one thing. It has the same director, Shinji Aramaki.
And what did he direct of Matsumoto's?
He directed the Harlock CGI movie. And when he was planning the Harlock CGI movie, he came to us, because he became a friend of mine, and he asked, how is Harlock conceived in France? And what are your ideas? And after the movie was out and we saw it, he said, well, you see, this, and this, I took from your ideas. We're talking about a movie that is one of the high ranking box office movies in France and Italy for animation the year it came out.
It did fantastically, even if it's not universally as loved.
No, but I mean, the movie, has its good and bad parts, etc. But we had the chance somehow, we didn't do it on purpose, to impact what was in that movie, because the artist took what we did into account. And my friend, which I talked about earlier, he told me, well, you had a great role, because by bringing directors in Europe, by bringing them to Annecy, by showing them stuff which is not in Japan, you inspire them. And that's something very important, because they don't get to get out so much, and they don't get to communicate so much. And no one in Japan actually knows how Harlock fans, so Matsumoto fans, relate to the works. But now they do, because Toki No Wa was able to do things and got introduced everywhere, because we got to meet and befriend the director that was going to do Harlock, but at the time we met him, we didn't even know he would do that, etc., etc. Maybe Matsumoto is unique, or at least it's a rare case, because it's one of the most ancient anime to have a following internationally, and even if it's not everywhere, and it has a very mature base of people that grew with that universe. And because Matsumoto himself sees himself as an artist, and he's quite open to the rest of the world somehow, and he's, he has this image of him. Leiji Matsumoto has this image to be he's Harlock in the manga industry. He's the pirate, he's the outsider. So
but he's Totoro in the context of the art. Of course,
it's in his characters, but he sees himself as an outlaw of the manga industry, because he also likes to interact with people, which is not the case of most manga artists, which are protected. I mean, when I say protected, I mean caged. By editors. You can never access a manga author.
With that, I'm sorry, but with that freedom, it's how Leiji talked about freedom. With that freedom came great consequences, and his work has not always been treated with respect by publishers. And the reason why we don't have a good Harlock dub is because Harmony Gold or whoever thought they could do whatever the hell they want with it. And his work has been almost tarnished in a lot of those instances because of his sort of rogue nature.
I don't think it's the rogue nature of the work. In Japan, yes. In Japan, he's considered as an outsider, but because he did Galaxy Express, etc., he has a huge amount of respect. But outside in America, I mean, it's not about who Leiji Matsumoto was. They had no idea who he was. It's just like they have these crappy cartoons. They don't know how to handle them. They do whatever they can. And, sometimes it doesn't do too bad because in the end, Robotech is not too bad, for example.
Yeah, I mean, Macross is there, but even there, they manipulated so many different things to create one thing, which didn't work out so well with Captain Harlock and Queen Melania.
Because, I mean, it's different times, different ways to see the works, different openings to the work. If you look at Robotech, what they really did was create a show with enough episodes to syndicate it.
Mm-hmm.
Did they enhance the show? Not really. It's 3 different stories. They link them artificially. The show doesn't revolve on the linking the shows. It's like, so they changed some names and they changed what protoculture was. So when you look at it, you say, no, something is already about protoculture. You feel that it's not exactly what they mean. You don't really understand. But in the end, I was older when I watched Robotech, so I figured it out. Did it deteriorate the show greatly? No. I wouldn't say the same for Battle of Planets, which doesn't look like the original. But then again, was considered to be impossible to show something of the violence of Gatchaman on American TV. So they had to edit it out somewhere because, Gatchaman is very, very, very innovative and very in advance for its time. So for Harlock, space pirates, naked girls, the Amazons, not that easy.
I guess what I'm saying is I think that in your context in France and Italy, publishers have been forced to maybe treat the works with a bit more respect just because them launching it in more of a pure state, unlike in America where things were getting chopped up. You have Queen Melania and Captain Harlock just being smashed together for no good reason. You guys got a lot of respect from the publishers, had to respect it a lot more. And like you said, in Japan and America, where in Japan, he had Gainax working on something. They turned out to be untrustworthy. There's another film studio talking about a live action Captain Harlock, which is in complete disarray, that was apparently crowdfunded. That sounds like it was a scam. Through his roguish nature, his pirate nature, and not being as protected or caged, as you said, by production companies, it has had some negative consequences. And that is reflected in how he talks about freedom, right? In 999, freedom is inherently linked with death, the ability to die. In a machine man body, you live forever, but you lose your freedom. And I guess that's kind of my point.
Your point is valid. The examples you use are not necessarily all valid. So if you tell me that's why he was respected more when the anime was shown here, at least the first ones. It's just because they didn't need to edit it in another format because the system was not syndication, so they just showed it.
Okay.
But they didn't have any consideration for. The guy that he's now dead, but a few years ago, but that brought all this stuff into France. He still a few years before his death, he said he talked about it like it was scrap. Okay.
So it was the greater machine and system by which these things are distributed in different countries.
Exactly.
Okay.
It was the system. There was no. So that then there was respect that grew, etc. That is true for anime in general. That is the truth. Matsumoto was always roguish, out of the system, complicated in Japan, hard to control for Japanese publishers, etc. So that, in effect, as you point out, creates a series of issues. Versus.
You publish tens of dozens of DVDs of Leijiverse, and I'm assuming maybe even hundreds from the early 2000s till up to the time where you actually leave Kaze, the thing that you created. Can you tell me what led to that and what happened?
I sold my company, which was to become Viz Media Europe, basically.
Okay.
And which has now a few months ago been sold to Warner to become Crunchyroll Europe.
Oh.
So that's what happened with Kaze. I mean, Kaze is still the leading company in France and Germany, actually. Well,
Viz now Crunchyroll Europe. I'm assuming Kaze is no longer a name.
Yeah, it's now Crunchyroll Europe, basically.
Yeah.
And it was Viz Media Europe. But that's... So the question is, why did I do it? And the answer to... It's not easy to tell you why I sold my company, because obviously, as I said in my story, when I created it, I never even thought I would sell my company one day. I considered, perhaps wrongly, that by the time a Japanese company will buy my company, well, when a Japanese company buys my company, means Japan is here to stay. You know, I was always worried about anime. People in France, the professionals, they're not really about anime. The comic book publishers, they're French comic book publishers, manga. Most of the people that are head of these companies, they hate it. They pretend they don't, but they hate it. So, you know, if manga stopped to work, everyone would run out. Now this is not possible, and sending it to Japan was giving many more possibilities back to Japan to do something with their content. Second reason is that I didn't want to do only anime-related stuff all my life. I also wanted to do comic book-related stuff and also imaginary universe stuff, etc. And that I thought, well, that's the opportunity to move and do other stuff of interest.
Yeah, and have a nest egg to rely on to be freer, not so economically bound to one thing.
Yeah, but anyway, Kaze, to grow, we were in a crisis. So the thing is, we could have maintained the company, but it would have been very hard for me to develop it. As I think I've mentioned a couple of times, I always look at the future and what I can build anew, and doing the same thing over and over again. It's not so exciting for me.
Yeah.
But I still continue to do stuff with anime from a different angle. So I'm very happy. And I will always be doing stuff with anime. Always.
Yes. So you touched on it a bit in the beginning, and just now, I mean, you've moved on. You have quite a few ventures, 2 bars. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit?
I've got them here, but see, for example, I've got the Cowboy Bebop game we released.
Oh, okay. I did see that actually just the other day because I saw some trading card game stuff from Cowboy Bebop, and my Google searches almost immediately took me to that game.
We did an Attack on Titan game.
So you do have some goodies to show off.
But actually, you know what? Tomorrow evening, I'm giving an interview to Spanish gaming guys.
Oh, okay.
That's why I put the stuff here.
That's contextual.
And I'm giving the interview in Spanish, and my level of Spanish is just 5 years in high school. So it's very low. So it's like a new challenge for me. Yay.
Yeah. Since you've left Kaze, since you sold that company, can you give me a little series of events of what you've been doing?
Yes. So I have founded another anime company, which I don't run, which is called Anime Limited, which is active in the UK and France. It's a smaller scale, but I understood that Kaze was going to go more around the... Viz Media is more about the big money, the Pokemon, etc. And I was worried about theatrical, which was very important. So we do a lot of theatrical releases like Your Name and other stuff. I did, so I created my game company, Don't Panic Games, which is doing games, not only from anime, but it's one of the only companies that is consistently doing games from anime. And I'm a gamer. I always was a gamer. And the fact that Kaze started with Lotus War is a clue, in case you didn't.
A little D&D there, yes.
So it's not about, just putting licenses on games, making real games that are really good and really reflect the universes. And with Cowboy Bebop, we had a really, really good track record of reviews, etc. Actually, we have an universally good track record of reviews, which says The game is really good, and if you know Cowboy Bebop, it's extraordinary. Basically, that's what everyone says. So I'm quite happy about it. I have a publishing company, and Animeland actually is publishing some books, interesting books about the manga industry or the manga. We have a book called 100 Years of Japanese Animation, for example, and we're also publishing some novels, like the original novel for Kiki, Major no Takubin, the Kiki's delivery service. So we're doing a lot of publishing stuff like that, organizing some concerts. So
cool.
we do this year. We have created a Dragon Ball concert, which was supposed to premiere this year in Chicago in March. It didn't happen. I will explain why. I think you can figure it out.
Yes.
We're doing a Saint Seiya concert this year. We did the premiere of a Ghibli concert in Europe. So limited amount of concerts, orchestrals, but we are creating some anyway. And I have my bars, the bar at the end of the universe, so I can geek with other people when I feel like it, and they have a place to go out, because that's why I created it. I figured that I didn't really have a place I liked hanging out in. Regular bars were so I basically created that. And this and that and a lot of other stuff, but basically everything I do, or most of everything I do, is centered on geek universes.
Have you touched on Matsumoto's work since leaving Kaze?
Not directly. Of course, we have talked about Matsumoto in some books and stuff, obviously, but I have not directly touched his work since I left Kaze, which does not mean I will not be touching it again.
Yes.
Actually, I can definitely tell you there's a very strong chance I will be touching it again soon.
Okay, so something in the works, and we'll all look very forward to that, at least people in France.
For the moment, I look forward the amount of trouble in starting new projects with Japanese. But up to now, I have a pretty good track record, so let's
cross some fingers.
Let's theorize that it will stay good.
I'll knock on some wood here for you.
Thank you. I need it. I need everything I can get.
So, last couple questions, a little more personal here. The Leijiverse is so ripe with wonderful characters, and I'm just curious, what character are you? Or at least, what character resonates with you the most?
Well, I asked myself the question, and I tried to turn around it, but the truth is, it's Harlock. So you're going to tell me it's probably what most people answer. As you can, well, it's Harlock or maybe Emeraldas, but it's hard to identify with a woman when you're a man. But I am always pioneering. Well, actually, I am a pioneer, I am a leader, and I am always fighting against the establishment. I mean, I brought anime against the establishment. I had to fight everything. I had to go to court to defend Animeland because they didn't want us to let us publish some images because they thought they want for kids, and animation is for kids. When we started distributing VHS, none of the video stores would sell it. We had to create a network through comic book stores to prove that there was a market. And today, when I opened the bar at the end of the universe, the people from the beer business, the alcohol business, and it will never work. Geeks don't drink. It will never work. And it's one.
They've never been to a D&D session.
And then they came and they say, "Okay, you're one of the 5% top consumers of beer in Paris." So I have always, and sometimes it's a flaw, but I am I'm always looking at things from different angles. That's why big companies, don't think I would do well in a big company.
Yeah, I mean, freedom, like I said, I mean, it has consequences, and I wouldn't say it's a flaw, but you've dealt with the consequences of exercising your freedom.
I mean, that's who I am, and and one of the strengths of Matsumoto's characters is they are not flawless. They make mistakes. They all make mistakes.
I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons he didn't get popular in America is because especially with Captain Harlock, I feel like a publisher saw Youth in Arcadia and saw him fly in a Nazi plane, and they're like, we can't make this guy sympathetic. And, you have the whole Cockpit series where Matsumoto specifically sets out on a mission to humanize Japanese soldiers and, Axis soldiers during that time period and make them not evil, because they were not evil. They were humans. I don't really see, and in Harlock and in the Leijiverse, I see less of a definition of good and evil and more of an expression of yin and yang and how we all circle around one another. And, at the end of Adieu Galaxy Express, Harlock toasts with Faust. And Faust has become the villain, and for Tetsuro, his father, that's his main opposition, it turns out. So there's an excellent display of humanity there, and freedom is a great way to express.
Really great work. I'm so happy I published it. It's really, really good.
Yes,
but it's never sold well. It's it's too serious to be considered as real entertainment.
Well, I think that I was just watching Tim Elder and Helen McCarthy talk in an interview, and we have something with McCarthy set up. So if you're watching this, stay tuned. And they were discussing how culture generally, what culture appreciates in terms of entertainment based on the situation they are living in. And over the last couple decades, we've seen things like slice of life anime really take off. And that may be representative of how times leading up to where we are now were much less war-torn. There weren't any pandemics. There wasn't so much of a need to express the story of one man's struggle. And here we are. I think this is the time where stories like that are going to start coming back and being more important to viewers as it expresses their own situation, something they can empathize with, of a need to stand up to systematic oppression and things of that nature.
This is honey to my ears.
Yeah, I think it's coming. You're a Harlock, and that's fantastic.
So I think that I'm really Harlock. I thought it over. I said, "Oh, that's the easy answer." But even if I'm trying to figure it out the right way, and I actually think next time I see the guys from Toki No Wa, I will ask them the question: what character do you think I am? I will see what they answer.
Yeah. Everybody will start evaluating one another under the context of the Leijiverse. I just have one more question for you. How do you believe the Leijiverse and Leiji Matsumoto's work have impacted your life? Not just financially, not just what you do for a living, but maybe who you are as a person.
Anime has shaped who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and with what anime? Well, the younger I've seen it, and the more it has impacted me. It's impossible for me to tell you how exactly Harlock impacted me and defined my life, because I think it's to a huge extent. Mm-hmm. So such a huge extent that I would probably need to go through psychoanalysis to to understand how it was. I told you I thought I was Harlock, but actually the answer to that is probably I am Harlock because I emulated Harlock. That might actually be the case, because these fascinating stories, this humanity, this etc. were all things. I told you people think that kids are stupider than they are and they don't understand. But I can tell you I understood very much what was going on in Harlock. Today, I note I have a lot of characteristics which are very strong in anime and manga. I know that, honestly, the character, which I remember most from what I watched as a kid, is Harlock, by far. I'm saying as a kid, before I was 10 years old. As a character, he is the strongest character for his influence on me. I'm not saying necessarily Harlock was always my favorite show, though it was pretty much, but there were others. But if you ask me what character in the shows has impressed me more, it is most probably that one.
Yeah, made that severe impression, and you went on to fight your own battles, and thank you for recounting those battles and those triumphs and all the work that you've done. I appreciate it so much.
Tell the tale.
You fly under a flag of freedom, sir.
Yes. Where's it? Oh, I don't know.
Well, if you get a picture of it, we'll show it. But
yes, I mean, it's honestly, and I'm once again, it's difficult to describe yourself, and I am not a very I don't like to show off, especially because some people could see it that way. But yes, when you say it that way, it makes so perfect sense to me that I don't know what else to say.
Yep. Well, I'm glad you were able to put all those pieces together. And again, thank you so much for sitting with me, sharing with me. You and I have talked probably longer than anybody else I've spoken with, and you've such a treasure trove of...
I'm so slow, and I have so many war stories, and I'm so old that it's...
Well, maybe we'll have to get you back. Maybe we'll have to get you back. And like I said, there's a lot of topics we touched on that I don't know. We'll see how the audience reacts to it. So again, we'll talk again soon. And I am going to ask something of you. I've been asking everybody this. Would you help us sign off here with a Harlock salute?
I don't have my sword.
Oh, well, it just takes your hands. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
The one with the sword.
To me, the salute is 2 fingers to the head.
Yeah, but the one with the sword is the one that mocks me most. Because he has a sword.
Okay, yes, you're right. I guess there is something of a salute there.
How he salutes his enemy in a fight.
Okay. Well, audience, get prepared for a fight.
I will get a sword and do another one. I don't have a Cosmo gun. Fuck. Sorry. Damn it.
Well, this fucking interview's over. Thank you all so much for watching. Leijiverse is on Facebook, facebook.com/Leijiverse. Come and check us out. There's plenty more interviews to see, and there's plenty more coming in the future. Cedric, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon. Later.